thing I noticed when I opened my eyes was the ceiling. White, acoustic tile. A water stain shaped like a boot in the upper left corner. I stared at it for what felt like a long time before my brain caught up with the rest of me. Then the smell hit. That specific hospital smell, antiseptic and recycled air, and something underneath it that you never quite name but always recognize. My throat was sandpaper. My left shoulder felt like someone had tried to remove it and changed their mind halfway through. And there was a sound, a low, steady beep from somewhere to my right that told me wherever I was, at least my heart was still doing its job. I tried to turn my head. Bad idea. Hey, don't move yet. My mother's voice. I knew it before I could focus on her face. She was leaning over me, one hand on the side rail of the bed, her hair loose in a way she never wears it in public. That's when I knew it was serious. My mother does not leave the house with her hair down. Mom! My voice came out like gravel through a screen door. I'm here. I'm right here. She squeezed my hand, the right one, not the shoulder side. You're okay. You're going to be okay. I had about 4 seconds of pure relief before I remembered. Where's my husband? Her face did something I'd never seen it do before. Not grief exactly, not fear. Something more careful than either of those things. He's fine, she said. He's down the hall. I want to see him. You need to rest first. Mom. Listen to me. She leaned closer, and her voice dropped so low I had to hold my breath to hear it. Her eyes cut to the door and back to me. I need you to do something, and I need you to trust me right now without asking why. Can you do that? Something cold moved through me that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. What? If anyone comes in, his family, anyone, I need you to close your eyes. Stay still. Let them think you're still unconscious. She held my gaze. Please, just until I can explain. I should have argued. I should have demanded an explanation on the spot. But there was something in her face that I hadn't seen since the night my father got his diagnosis. A kind of controlled terror that she was trying very hard not to let me see. And I trusted her. I have always trusted her. So I closed my eyes. I don't know how much time passed. 10 minutes, maybe 20. I drifted in and out of something that wasn't quite sleep, wasn't quite wakefulness. The beeping continued. My shoulder continued. The boot-shaped water stain burned itself into the back of my eyelids. Then I heard the door. Footsteps, more than one person. My mother-in-law's voice first. I recognized the particular clip of it, the way she ends sentences like she's already moved on to the next dot. The nurse said she's been in and out. If she's conscious enough to ask questions, we have a problem. A lower voice. A man's, my father-in-law. It doesn't matter what she asks. It matters what she can prove. She's a forensic accountant. My mother-in-law again. That's exactly the problem, isn't it? Silence. My heart was doing something loud and unreasonable behind my ribs, and I was genuinely afraid the monitor would give me away, but nobody seemed to notice. The insurance payout goes directly into the joint account, the lower voice said. She won't have grounds to contest anything if she's the one in the accident. It looks like compensation. And the filing? Tuesday, before she is discharged if we move fast enough. A pause. Then my mother-in-law said something that I have turned over in my mind every single day since. She should have just signed the revision when he asked her to. This didn't have to get complicated. The door opened, closed. They were gone. I lay there for a long moment with my eyes still shut and my mother's hand still in mine, and I thought, revision? He asked me to sign a revision. 3 weeks ago, he'd left a folder on the kitchen counter. Just some updated language in the prenup, babe. My parents' attorney flagged a few things, and I had said I'd look at it later, and later had turned into the week from hell at work. 2 quarterly audits, and a deposition I was consulting on, and I had never gotten around to looking at it. The folder was still on my desk at home. I am a forensic accountant. I find money people are trying to hide. I do it for a living. I am good at it. I am embarrassingly good at it. And I had let a document sit on my desk for 3 weeks because I trusted my husband. I opened my eyes. My mother was watching me. She already knew I'd heard everything. She'd heard it too. How long have you known something was wrong? I asked her. She looked down at our joined hands, long enough that I didn't want to be right. I had met my husband 4 years earlier at a conference in Chicago, one of those industry events where you know approximately 6 people and spend most of the time near the shrimp cocktail pretending to check your phone. He'd come to stand next to me at the shrimp cocktail. He was funny and he was warm and he had this way of listening that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. I fell hard and I fell fast, and when he proposed 14 months later in the kitchen of my apartment while we were making pasta and there was sauce on my shirt, I thought, this is exactly right. This is exactly right. This is exactly what it's supposed to feel like. His family was another matter. His mother had opinions about everything, my career, my apartment, the way I loaded the dishwasher. His father was quieter, but there was something measuring in the way he looked at me, like he was constantly running calculations I wasn't privy to. At our engagement dinner, his mother had made a toast that managed to mention my husband's previous girlfriend 3 times while technically being about us. I told myself all families were complicated. I told myself I was marrying him, not them. I told myself that love required generosity and that generosity meant extending benefit of the doubt. I was very good at telling myself things. The prenup had been their idea, not his, originally. I'd figured that out later, reading between lines. His parents had insisted on it, and he'd been embarrassed enough about it that he'd framed it as a formality, a thing to do quickly and move past. Their attorney had drafted it. I'd reviewed it, briefly, at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday 3 days before the wedding, because that's when I'd finally had time, and it had been standard enough that I hadn't flagged anything. I should have had my own attorney. I know that now. I knew it then, technically. In the abstract way, you know things that don't feel urgent. But I was 3 days from my wedding, and I was in love, and the language had looked standard. Standard is relative when someone has been very careful about what they want you to see. The accident had happened on a Thursday morning. I was driving myself to a client meeting, a 40-minute drive on a highway I took twice a week. A truck had drifted into my lane. I'd swerved. The guardrail had done the rest. I remembered the sound more than anything else, the particular crunch of metal that you don't understand until it's happening to you, and then the ceiling of my car, and then nothing. What I hadn't known, lying in that hospital bed, was that the truck driver had already been interviewed, that he had a name, that he had been found to have ties to a company my father-in-law's business had contracted with twice in the past year. I didn't know any of that yet. That came later. What I knew, lying there with my shoulder throbbing and my mother's hand in mine, and the words, "Before she's discharged if we move fast enough," still hanging in the air of that room, was that I needed to get to my desk. I needed to find that folder. My mother helped me get my phone from the plastic bag of personal belongings the hospital had put in the cabinet. It was cracked down one side, but it still worked. I texted my work partner, the woman I'd been doing joint consulting with for 6 years, the one who had once spent 36 consecutive hours helping me reconstruct a shell company paper trail for a federal case. I texted her 3 words, "I need you." She called back in 4 minutes. I told her everything I'd heard. I kept my voice low and even, the way I do when I'm working, the way I'd trained myself to stay clinical, even when the numbers I'm looking at represent something that makes me feel sick. She listened without interrupting, which is one of her best qualities. When I finished, she said, "The folder on your desk. Tell me you didn't sign it." I didn't sign it. Okay, I heard her already moving, already in the mood I knew well. The one where she stops being my friend and becomes the best investigator I've ever worked with. "I'm going to your apartment. Text your mom to call the property manager if you need to. I can be there in 20 minutes. What am I looking for? Everything. The original prenup, the revision, anything else in that folder. I hesitated and checked the joint account, the savings account, see if anything's moved in the last 3 weeks. A pause. You think they already started? I think they were talking about Tuesday. I think they've been planning this for a while. Another pause, smaller. "I'll call you from the car." She called me from the car and from my apartment. And for the next 4 hours, while I lay in that hospital bed pretending to rest, she walked me through what she was finding piece by piece. The revision to the prenup was 8 pages. The original had been 4. The new language was buried in the back clause after clause of what the document called asset reconciliation provisions, which is a phrase designed to sound like paperwork and actually means in the event of separation. Any funds deposited into jointly held accounts during the marriage are subject to recovery by the originating party, provided the originating party can demonstrate primary contribution. I had contributed significantly to our joint savings. I had a higher salary. I had put in more, month over month, for 3.5 years. Under the original prenup, those contributions were protected. Under the revision, they were recoverable by him, by his family's attorney, acting on his behalf. It wasn't just the savings account, though. The revision also included language about my private consulting income, how any income derived from contracts signed after the marriage date would be considered marital property in full, while his family's business income would retain its separate classification. I know what this kind of language costs to draft. I know what it takes to get it into a document that looks standard on the surface. Someone had spent real time on this. Someone had been planning this for longer than 3 weeks. My work partner found something else too, buried in the file folder, behind the prenup revision. Behind a page of what looked like boilerplate was a single sheet of paper with 2 signatures on it. One was my husband's, the other was a notary stamp I didn't recognize. She photographed everything and emailed it to me, and I forwarded it to my personal attorney before I'd even fully processed what I was looking at. My personal attorney, who is 72 years old and has the energy of a caffeinated 30-year-old and absolutely no patience for what she calls financial theater, called me back 11 minutes later. "This revision was drafted to be signed under duress or distraction," she said. "The language is predatory, but it's also sloppy in places. They wrote it assuming you wouldn't scrutinize it. Where's the notary from?" I didn't know yet. "Find out, and do not let them file anything before I can get to the courthouse." "What day did they say?" "Tuesday." "Today is Friday. I have time." She paused. "Are you hurt?" "My shoulder, possibly my collarbone." "I'm sorry," and she meant it, I could tell. "We're going to take care of this. Rest if you can." I did not rest. My husband came to see me that evening. He came alone, without his parents, and he held my hand, and his eyes were wet, and he said all the right things. "I was so scared I got here as fast as I could. I'm so glad you're okay." He looked genuine. He looked like the man I'd made pasta with. He looked like the man whose last name I'd taken. I looked at him and I thought about the folder on my desk and the words in the revision, and before she's discharged, if we move fast enough. "I love you," he said. "I know," I said. I didn't say it back. That night, after he'd gone, after my mother had fallen asleep in the chair by the window, I lay awake and I thought about the shape of the thing I was holding. Not just the betrayal. I couldn't let myself feel the full weight of that yet, the way you can't look directly at something very bright, but the structure of it, the planning, the fact that someone had hired a truck driver, The fact that the revision had been sitting on my counter for 3 weeks, patient as a trap. This had not been spontaneous. This had been built. I am a forensic accountant. I understand, better than most people, that financial crimes are almost never about the money at the end. They're about control. They're about the moment someone decided that another person's autonomy was an inconvenience to be managed. I had been managed. I spent the next several weeks being very quiet about what I knew. I was discharged on Sunday. My collarbone had a small fracture, non-surgical, immobilized, and time-sensitive. I went home. I moved through our apartment, touching things I'd lived with for 3 years and thinking about what was mine and what was ours and what was neither. My attorney filed an emergency injunction on Monday morning, blocking any changes to jointly held accounts pending investigation. She did it quietly, through a judge who had no connection to my husband's family's network of attorneys. By Tuesday, when they would have filed, there was nothing left to file. I watched my father-in-law's face at dinner that Tuesday evening. They came over, his parents, bearing a casserole and condolences and careful questions about how I was feeling. I watched him check his phone twice and go very still and put the phone back in his pocket. He knew. I kept passing the casserole. What came out over the following weeks, through my attorney and my work partner and a private investigator my attorney recommended, was more than I'd expected and exactly as much as I'd feared. The truck driver, I want to be careful here about what I can say, and what was ultimately proven, had a financial relationship with a subcontractor. That subcontractor had a relationship with my father-in-law's company. There were 3 layers between the arrangement and anyone you could name in a document, but 3 layers is not impenetrable. 3 layers is actually pretty standard for people who know what they're doing, and I know what I'm doing. The money trail doesn't lie. It hides, sometimes. It uses aliases and subsidiary accounts and timing that's designed to look coincidental. But underneath all of that, it has a shape. And once you see the shape, you can't unsee it. My attorney had contacts in the right places. The investigation that followed was not mine. It was handled by people with the authority to handle it. What I contributed was the financial documentation, organized and annotated in the format I use for federal cases, the kind of thing that takes complex arrangements and makes them legible to people who need to act on them. My husband's family hired 4 attorneys. My husband hired a 5th. There were depositions that lasted entire days. There were moments, more than I'll admit, when I sat in rooms full of people arguing about my life and felt so tired I thought I might simply dissolve. But I didn't dissolve. I have never dissolved. The divorce was finalized 8 months after the accident. The prenup, the original prenup, not the revision they'd never gotten me to sign, held. My contributions to our joint accounts came back to me. My consulting income, earned through my own labor, remained mine. The asset protection I'd built over a decade of careful work before I ever met him remained intact. Was it everything? No. 3.5 years of a life cost something that isn't in any account. The man I thought I was marrying, the one by the shrimp cocktail in Chicago. I don't know what was real and what was performance, and I suspect I will be a long time making my peace with not knowing. But here's what I do know. My work partner and I took on 2 new clients in the months following everything. Both were women who came to us through a legal aid referral, both in situations involving financial arrangements they didn't fully understand, prenups and joint accounts, and income classifications that had been structured to their disadvantage. We didn't charge them our usual rate. We reconstructed what had been done to them, and we gave them something they could take to court. One of them sent me a card afterward, handwritten on plain stationery. It said, "I didn't know this was possible. I didn't know anyone would help me see it." I have that card in my desk drawer. I take it out sometimes. When I think about the woman who lay in that hospital bed with her eyes closed, listening to 2 people discuss her life like it was a scheduling problem, I want to tell her something. I want to tell her that the thing they didn't account for, the thing that none of the layers and the careful language and the patient, constructed plan could account for, was that she was paying attention. She was always paying attention. She just needed to stop being polite about it. There's a moment I keep coming back to. Not the accident, not the courtroom, not even the night I finally moved the last box out of the apartment we'd shared. It's smaller than all of that. It's the moment I was lying in that hospital bed with my eyes closed, listening, and I made a choice not to react, not to cry, not to fall apart, but to pay attention. That choice didn't come from nowhere. It came from every year I'd spent learning that the truth has a shape, and that if you stay still long enough, you can trace it. I think about what my in-laws counted on when they built what they built. They counted on me being distracted. They counted on love making me careless. And honestly, they weren't wrong that love had made me less careful than I should have been. I had let that folder sit on my desk for 3 weeks. I had told myself that trust was a form of generosity. I had extended benefit of the doubt past the point where the doubt had started to have real evidence behind it. That part is on me, and I've made my peace with it. Integrity isn't just about what other people do to you. It's about being honest with yourself about where you looked away and why. I looked away because I wanted a certain life to be real. That's human. But the moment I heard those words in that hospital room, the moment the shape of the thing became clear, I stopped looking away. That's also human, and that second choice is the one I'm most proud of. What saved me wasn't luck. It wasn't the accident of being in the right profession. It was the habit, built over years of hard work, of understanding how systems operate, how money moves, how language can be designed to obscure rather than clarify. Intelligence isn't a fixed thing you're born with. It's a muscle you build by staying curious, by asking one more question, by refusing to accept standard as a synonym for safe. I had built that muscle. When I needed it, it was there. And then there's the part nobody talks about enough. The part that happens after you know the truth, when you still have to keep going. The depositions that lasted all day. The evenings sitting in rooms full of people arguing about my life while I held myself together. The divorce that was technically a victory and still cost something real. Resilience isn't dramatic. It doesn't look the way it does in movies. It looks like getting up on a Tuesday and doing the next necessary thing, and then the next one, and then the one after that, until one day you realize the weight you've been carrying has redistributed itself into something you can live with. The two women my work partner and I helped afterward, the ones who came to us not knowing that what had been done to them could be undone, I think about them a lot. I think about the card in my desk drawer. I think about the fact that the worst thing that happened to me became the reason I knew how to help them. That's not a comfortable kind of meaning. It doesn't make the original thing okay. But it's real. And real is what I have to work with. Pay attention to the things you keep not looking at. Build skills that let you see clearly. And when the hard part comes, because it comes for everyone in one form or another, trust that you have more in you than the people underestimating you ever accounted for. I did, and I was right.